With the end of the Thargoid War, it would appear that the Thargoids are taking a back seat to the game narrative for a while. This presents an opportunity to analyze the best and worst parts of AX combat and provide some additional feedback. My hope is that the Thargoids return at some point in the future, but that their tactics and behavior evolve to reflect lessons learned from their defeat. There are also some dynamics of AX combat that need to be tweaked to make the pace and structure of combat feel more rewarding. The basics behind Thargoid combat revolve around 3 types of Thargoid ship. Thargoid scouts act as a mainline multi-role fighter. These ships are cheap and flexible light attack craft that can be adapted for several different roles. These ships are individually weak, but can group together to form dangerous swarms, where the individual ships are able to lend power and repairs to each other. This makes them a dangerous and adaptable foe that can saturate hardened targets or screen small ships out of an incoming attack. Thargoid hunters are stronger and more dangerous medium-sized Thargoid ships. These more specialized craft often function in a supporting role. They sport stronger armor and shields with smaller-scale versions of the weapons carried by interceptors. These ships are a more powerful individual threat that are able to destroy most trade and exploration ships quickly without issue. They fare poorly defending against multiple attackers, but can bind up and slow down fast ships, making them more vulnerable to attack by other Thargoid craft. Interceptors are any Thargoid ship with a Thargoid heart, allowing for their armor to regenerate and granting them immunity to conventional weapons. These ships require a dedicated AX damage source to harm, and can only be damaged to the threshold of their Thargoid hearts. This mechanic requires hearts to be individually targeted and destroyed in sequence, before the interceptor itself can be killed. The number of Thargoid hearts determine the strength and power of a Thargoid craft, with the least powerful being the Cyclops at 4 hearts, and culminating in the Hydra at 8 hearts. Thargoid hearts are invulnerable until they are exerted through damage to the interceptor's hull, which provides a short window through which an interceptor heart can be damaged and destroyed. Mechanically, the system I've described follows many of the common tropes seen in other MMO games. Interceptors are modeled as a boss fight, where each heart is destroyed as part of a damage phase, and between these phases, the interceptor is able to retaliate with an ability that affects combat in the surrounding area. Interceptors feature a secondary attack using Thargon Swarms, which work to harry attackers with devastating damage. Thargon Swarms are invulnerable to all weapons except for the flak launcher. Lightning attacks, caustic missiles, suicide Thargon Swarms, and Shutdown Fields are common among all interceptor variants, and are used between heart cycles to retaliate against attacking ships between each damage phase. This conventional boss fight mechanic system is time-tested and well-proven across many games, but is optimized around single-entity encounters. Changing the difficulty for these encounters can be done by altering the players, the environment, or the boss itself. This allows for mechanics to be built up over time as a game evolves and various fight mechanics develop. Initially, a Cyclops was considered lethal because the armor, defenses, and weapons available to fight it were primitive and limited. As new weapons appeared and made the Cyclops less threatening, more powerful interceptors were introduced with additional hearts. Stronger interceptors required better weapons, which allowed for a higher threat level overall. This process continued up until the Hydra Interceptor, which is the current pinnacle of all Thargoid interceptors. Once the Hydra became a common sight, and weapons were provided that could defeat it, the way to increase the scale and difficulty of a Thargoid fight became to add more interceptors. The problem with this methodology is that the mechanics behind interceptor combat work best against a single interceptor. They rapidly become clumsy and frustrating when multiple high-level interceptors are allowed to fight in a single engagement. Typical AXI doctrine acknowledges this by having a well-coordinated team switch between different Hydra interceptors in a multi-Hydra fight, hitting and exerting one interceptor before rotating to the next. If a Hydra isn't the primary focus of attacks, that Hydra is ignored in favor of the current focus. This pattern continues until all threats are neutralized, often at the cost of several members of the team being destroyed or driven off by the other Hydras multiple times. Interceptor fights are balanced around players paying attention to the interceptor and reacting to its telegraphed attacks, while keeping the fight paced to avoid an enrage timeout condition that causes Thargoid swarms to always enter a suicide attack state. By spawning multiple interceptors, players are forced to either divide their resources or focus on one threat at a time, preventing appropriate response to attacks from non-focused interceptors. This leaves players to choose between ignoring incoming damage or retreating, which aren't fun or engaging decisions. Both options feel like losing and are constant issues presented during the course of a multi-interceptor attack. The Thargoids need to evolve their strategy in general, as they have largely failed to apply their ships and weapons beyond sheer attrition, which has been the reason these scalability issues have been so exposed. Interceptors are presented as powerful assets, but are spent as if they're completely expendable. An alien species with such advanced technology should be using advanced tactics, leveraging the assets already in hand to outsmart and outshoot an opponent with fewer resources. The end of the Thargoid War should trigger a transition from an open and strategic conventional war to a tactical, guerrilla-style hit-and-run war. Rather than trying to assail the heart of the bubble, the Thargoid should become an oppositional force acting to harass and obstruct expansion efforts where possible. Titan motherships, if deployed, will remain aloof and remote, perhaps hidden entirely from the frontiers of human expansion. The following suggestions will propose nerfs to some Thargoid abilities and buffs to others, with a few higher effort additions to the asset pool. As always, this is an exercise in game design, and intended to be fun. It would be nice to see these suggestions taken in hand, but I don't expect anything will come of them. Thargoid interceptors are presented as a monolithic and deadly threat regardless of the type. Their size and shape are broad and imposing, giving the impression that these ships are built to intimidate. They represent a significant investment in resources that makes interceptors larger and more powerful than any player-controlled ship, yet they are often deployed like strike fighters. The first major change to behavior is to place the Thargoid interceptor at the center of any Thargoid attack. These ships have a commanding presence, so they should be presented as the commander of an attack group. This makes them the center of any attacking wave and the bulwark around which other Thargoid ships should actively rally. This means spawning fewer interceptors alongside more hunters and scouts. A wave of Thargoid ships should be centered around an attack formation. A Cyclops might spawn alone on low difficulty or with a dozen scouts and some hunters. AI behavior might allow for a weakly bound and uncoordinated attack, or emphasize tight formations that move as one and use each ship for its intended role. More powerful interceptors bring larger and more dynamic supporting fleets, with the Hydra bringing to bear the most significant mix of scouts and hunters. Tight formation-based combat means that Thargoids should be more reactive to the deaths of allies, and should rally around their interceptor when properly angered. Likewise, smaller ships might flee into hyperspace if their interceptor or other superior ship is destroyed, ending the wave and allowing them to regroup before attacking again with a stronger force. Keeping these formations mean that Thargoid ships should stay within a few kilometers of their interceptor or defensive position. This should be a hard constraint that will force Thargoid ships to disengage if a hostile craft leaves the perimeter of their formation. Likewise, interceptors themselves should be bound to the target event area and should not leave it. If Thargoids attack a port, then the interceptors should not leave a fixed radius around the target unless they are retreating to hyperspace. This restraint on behavior will help confine a fight, keeping Thargoids close to the area of interest, which will help prevent instance fragmentation and other latency issues that affect performance. Thargoid ships that leave the confinement zone for too long should exit to hyperspace or be relocated to the event area. This should help prevent instances from sticking on lost or stray Thargoid ships. Combat in Elite Dangerous has been generally too fast since engineering, and this has bled into the behavior of many high-level NPCs. Interceptors in particular have fallen into this trap, and should be slowed down to better facilitate group combat and formation fights. This makes things easier on the AI, helps mask latency issues, and provides for a more tactical encounter. The goal behind these adjustments is to keep interceptors close to their allied ships and encourage attacking players to deal with the escorts as part of the fight. Ships that go straight into the center of a formation and attack the interceptor will get focused down by supporting Thargoid craft, and punished brutally for overextending. The interceptor may elect to use its lightning attack to trap this ship, while its escorts brutalize the attacker as a message to the foolhardy. This turns the interceptor group into a puzzle that needs solving, and a problem that attacking commanders need to plan out for best effect. Does an attacking group work to kill the scouts, thus leaving the hunters more exposed? Do they pick apart the hunters in an effort to scatter and disorient their scouts? Do the small ships work to harass and engage escorts while the large ships focus on the interceptor? Do they go straight for the interceptor in an effort to scatter the whole battle group? All these tactical questions should drive attack strategy and reward those who consider these options carefully. In addition to this change in strategy, there are some long-standing issues with AX combat that need attention. The Shutdown Field was designed as a way to prevent players from attacking Thargoids during early encounters, which operated largely as a cutscene, where the Interceptor would stun a target ship, scan it, and leave. This built a sense of mystery and power that made the Thargoids very intimidating, but continued to persist after combat with the Thargoids became possible. Shutdown Fields present an enormous technological advantage that has never been properly explained or exploited. If multiple interceptors are present in an instance, what prevents them from using a series of staggered pulses to overcome shutdown field neutralizers and keep all ships permanently stunned? It's not a stretch to attempt using these pulses in this way, yet an advanced alien civilization has failed to attempt it after years of losing a war. The answer to this question is, of course, mechanical in nature. They don't do it because being shut down permanently isn't fun. I would contend that being shut down at all during combat isn't fun either for the same reason. It turns your high-intensity combat encounter into a cutscene that can't be cancelled and can kill you. Stripping the player of agency in a game is a precarious act that should be rare and purposeful, which is why most games restrict or severely limit similar actions during combat. When multiple interceptors are present with high network latency and occasional overlapping pulses, you get encounters where this cutscene is unavoidable. I've had nights where every pulse ignored my neutralizer and shut me down, and others where the field never had any effect at all. Of all the Thargoid weapons, the Shutdown Field is the most urgently in need of a rework, and made more prominent by its already existing alternative in the Orthus variant. The Orthus Interceptor uses a variation of the shutdown pulse that scrambles Guardian systems rather than disabling a ship. The Orthus pulse only affects Guardian technology and will rapidly destroy these modules. The affected ship can still function, but with reduced effectiveness. Players retain a great deal of agency over how to respond, but suffer a direct and meaningful consequence for exposure. One excellent solution to the shutdown field is to adapt it so that interceptors can distort or disable modules and weapons rather than shutting down a whole ship. If the Orthus can rapidly destroy Guardian-based technology, a standard pulse can deal less damage over more non-Guardian modules. It could trigger a reverberating cascade in shields, reboot thrusters or shields, scramble gimbaled weapons or sensors, break target locks, kill limpets and missiles, generally sow chaos on the flight deck while leaving players in control of their ships. Damage modeling for Thargoid interceptors has been somewhat clumsy, mostly due to latency issues, especially in large fights with several player-controlled ships. Too much emphasis is given to module sub-targeting, which can be very frustrating when networking or hitbox registration aren't working correctly. One possible workaround for this issue is to allow Thargoid hearts to become exhausted over time, expending their regenerative capacity based on the amount of damage they repair. Mechanically, this can take the form of the heart itself absorbing a percentage of the hull damage sustained, resulting in a specific heart always losing some integrity while it's exerted if the interceptor is taking damage. This should be weighted such that precisely targeting the heart is more effective, allowing and incentivizing single-player encounters where ammunition efficiency is preferred. For group engagements, the idea is to maintain a steady pace of combat, ensuring that a given fight with an interceptor will always progress so long as there are ships available to press damage. This makes the fight more resilient against networking issues and able to progress more consistently without becoming boring or tedious. Another issue needing attention is the Thargon Swarm, which presents a number of issues during large fights. Mechanically, these drones are a supplemental damage source and optional distraction to be dealt with between heart cycles. If ignored, the swarm can deal significant damage to shields, hull, and internal modules during an attack run, depending on its state of attack. These drones are invulnerable to all weapons except the flak launcher, which means that ships must sacrifice a valuable size 2 hardpoint for the ability to harm Thargon drones. AX ships are built fast enough to ignore the swarm by outrunning it, or by using groups of allies to spread out swarm damage. In either case, the swarm is regarded as mechanically annoying, and not tactically threatening. Current mechanics allow for the swarm to be ignored, so most commanders would rather fit an additional AX weapon that can damage the interceptor. This is disappointing not because Thargon drones are a bad idea, but because the way they are used makes them more annoying than effective. Thargons need a more specific role in the fight. Rather than being a fancy ship-launched fighter, Thargons ought to be an independent threat. A dedicated hunter variant that controls these drones and flies as part of the larger formation would be an effective alternative to the current system. This hunter variant I like to call the Rapier, named for its quick, jabbing attacks intended to maim and disable. The hunter itself bears no weapons for direct attack, but will direct its swarm of drones to attack on its behalf. Instead of randomly attacking ships around the instance, the Rapier will focus on attacking ships without shielding and prioritize ships trapped by an interceptor or hunter lightning attack. When the Rapier instigates an attack, it will mark the target with a long-range beam weapon. This beam weapon will apply the dazzle effect to gimbaled and turreted systems. It will also reboot point defense turrets and ECMs, suppressing utility defenses to make its own attacks more effective. The beam weapon paints a target ship for several seconds before these effects are applied, and will persist for a period of time after the weapon has been fired. This mechanic provides a warning to the pilot, allowing them to react by retreating or seeking support before the drones are dispatched. Once a ship has been marked, the Thargon drones will enter missile mode, emphasizing a sub-target on the ship's hardpoints and utility mounts. Only after these are destroyed will it switch to attacking thrusters. The Rapier will deal limited hull damage. Most of its efforts are to maim, pierce, and disable, leaving targets exposed to attack by other Thargoid ships. The Rapier does not finish off a defending ship. It leaves them disabled for other craft to destroy. When attacked, the Rapier can summon its drones for defense, sacrificing them to absorb incoming damage. If the Rapier is destroyed with drones still active, remaining drones will randomly select targets and suicide ram them. This creates an incentive to carefully strip the drones away using flak launchers or other weapons that can damage them. Multi-cannons, point defenses, fragmentation cannons, and shard cannons should be able to damage the swarm. None should be as effective as the frag cannon, but they should all be usable. When no target is available that can be attacked with ramming drones, then the Rapier will select targets and strafe them using its drone's energy weapons. This keeps it a relevant participant in all aspects of AX combat, and a threat constantly reminding its victims about its presence on the battlefield. Thargoid scouts act as general fighter support, cleaning up smaller and lighter threats or harassing the larger ships. While not individually significant, scouts possess area effect modifiers that can make swarms of them particularly dangerous. These area effects only impact other Thargoid scouts, but under a formation strategy, these effects should impact all Thargoid craft in some way. Regenerator scouts should be able to mend the hull of all Thargoid ships in range. Interceptors that have lost hearts can recover hull that would normally not be regenerated, though at reduced effectiveness compared to the healing effect one scout has on another. Scouts should not be able to effect major repairs to an interceptor with a single repair cycle. The goal here is to make scouts an important part of the battle group puzzle. This means that ship abilities need to directly complement all their peers, and that combat behavior should be adapted to help ensure scouts are relevant to the fight, and critically, stay close to the primary action sites in a given instance. In the current model, these little buggers have a tendency to wander off, resulting in an instance hang when required ships can't be found and destroyed. The AX weapon ecosystem has several significant holes which have never been explained or justified. The complete lack of size 4 AX hardpoints, along with a lack of human size 1 AX weapons, mean that small and large ships are required to under-equip or undertake a significant effort to acquire restricted hardware. There should be human AX weapons available in all hardpoint sizes from small to huge, especially where a conventional counterpart already exists. A size 4 AX multi-cannon is not an experience-breaking addition, but it has been left out of the combat ecosystem for unknown reasons. Other size 4 variants of existing weapons should also be considered, providing more options for large pad ships to exact major damage that they have been denied up to this point. The current lineup of Thargoid ships feels less than adequate for a civilization this advanced. Scouts and hunters feel like a logical escalation in capability, but then we jump from hunters directly to interceptors, the smallest of which are larger than any player-controlled ship available in the game. Having another class of Thargoid vessel that fills the gap between hunter and interceptor, allowing for more combat opportunities with conventional weapons, would help fill out the fleet and provide additional combinations of Thargoid ships without the need for an interceptor and full boss battle lineup. There are also missing elements for Thargoid outposts, settlements, and capital ships that could help fill the gap between the interceptors and a Titan, though we are venturing into territory that is too speculative for a meaningful discussion. If you have something to add, leave it in the comments below. These adjustments would help make a future return or revival of the Thargoid War feel distinctive compared to the most recent encounters. This change in tactics also allows for more scalable confrontations, ranging from small frontier skirmishes to major system-wide attacks. It helps work around current limitations in network technology by providing multiple paths to secure a kill, and help confine fights to specific points of interest that they involve. I believe these changes would improve the look and feel of AX combat, providing for a more dynamic and strategy-based future conflict. If you made it this far, you probably liked the video. Be sure to show it with a click in the right place, and a comment if you feel so inclined. That's all I have for today. Catch you all later.